How's it going, everyone? My name's Omar. I'm one part of That Millwall Podcast. Today, Millwall have just dropped the 2024-25 retained list, and two, maybe club legends, you could say, are leaving the club. Shaun Hutchinson, Wallace, gone. We're saying goodbye to over 500 combined appearances for the club, last-minute winners, iconic FA Cup nights, and the end of an era with them. In today's video, I'll break down all the key ins, outs, contract talks, youth releases, and what this tells us about the summer rebuild ahead our next nil. So if you're online, hit subscribe, drop a comment below with your favourite heart job mother moment, and let's get into it. And also let me know your thoughts on the retained list and who's departed. I'll give you my thoughts now. Let's run the intro. So as mentioned at the prelude just there, Shaun Hutchinson, 286 games, 268 games should I say, 14 goals, a playoff cleat trip for Bristol Rovers, has departed the club. Well, the second time lucky I suppose in that sense, with Hutchinson also departing last summer, only to re-sign as a player to make up squad numbers this season. Just gone. Wallace, 266 games, 13 goals, Everton FA Cup win of course, and the player of the season in 21-22. I think, the club have been quick to put some tributes out to the pair of them on socials. I think obviously I've seen stuff like to warrior-like, true professional, Christ turns merchant, of course. We all know who we're talking about there, Wallace. I mean, for me, two players, kind of towards the end of their careers, you could argue. I mean, obviously they've both been really great servants for us over the course of, I think, 9 years for Hutchinson, 7 years for Wallace. It feels like an end of an era. I think, you talk about players that are really been part of this club for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and kind of, two players that really personify his certain vision when he, especially with Hutchinson, arrived after the playoff defeat, to Barnsley, kind of came into the side, had these injury troubles at first, let's not forget. I mean, he kind of took a while to get going. It's one of those, I think, when he kind of got going at times, you can see why he signed for a club like us. He fit into the kind of identity of what Neil Harris was trying to do in his first spell as manager. Am I disappointed to see him go? No, of course. I think, they've both really been good servants to us. I think, they've just really been kind of the key part of the cementing ourselves at the championship level. Obviously, Wallace arrived, I think, the season after the near playoff chase in the championship. I think our second season at this tier are currently right in the championship. And, I think for me, there's two moments I mentioned already. The Bristol Rovers away game. I remember the limbs, of course, in that away end. It was a real kind of last minute winner. I think everyone talks about it, obviously, and being there that day, getting us into the playoffs, and then eventually going on to do the job and beating Bradford at Wembley. But for Wallace, I think as well, I mentioned the Cruyff turns. He kind of came in as a bit of a utility player, really. I think he was a centre half at Scunthorpe United. He played in the playoff game when Ivan Toney scored. Steve Morrison obviously had a key role in that playoff semi-final over two legs, and obviously Lee Gregory too. But I think Wallace obviously came in as a bit of a backup option, maybe initially you could say. He kind of eventually worked his way into the side and went on to win the Player of the Season award in 21-22, and deservedly so. He kind of played at a centre-half, played at left back, played on the left side of a back three at times, played left wing back. I think, both of them really kind of contributed as well with their goals. I mentioned 14 goals for Shaun Hutchinson, 13 goals for Wallace. A lot of them felt like last-minute winners. I think obviously a Preston away. Shaun Hutchinson got a good goal there. I think Evan scored a goal against Charlton at home. I think in the game when Matt Smith scored the last minute winner that day. And I even remember a game going up to Barnsley. Wallace scored in the 93rd minute. It was 0-0 at the time. And obviously again, the last minute winner. I think the players have both served the club really well. Both of them go with best wishes. And perhaps, maybe in both cases, we'll see them both again, around the club in the future. I think we're quite lucky to have these sort of players that stick around for a long time. And, maybe you could argue both should have been moved on sooner. But I think when you talk about key personnel, they're definitely both going to be remembered in very fond ways from Millwall supporters alike. So let's talk about other departures. Who else is leaving? Well, Duncan Watmore and Aaron Connolly, both gone at the end of their contracts. 4 loanees obviously returning to their parent clubs. Josh Coburn being one. Obviously Wintle going back to Cardiff, Sack Sturch, and also Scanlon. Any surprises? I mean, did I expect Aaron Connolly to get a new contract? It's a hard decision to make, but I think what's been highlighted is the amount of options we've got throughout the squads, all the different types of players that we've got available. And in reality, in his 6-month spell with us, has Connolly done enough to warrant getting a new contract. It's a tough decision to make, but I do like the approach from the club here where, I think he scored, one goal and didn't really get going enough for me, Connolly, and had kind of stop-start injury spells as well. And I think he's looking for that home. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case with us personally, but also Josh Coburn obviously leaving. Will we go back in for him? I think he's been a bit marred after that stitter he missed at Burnley away last game of the season. But for me, I would potentially explore the options, try and get him in on a permanent deal. It's only if the finances work right with that. I don't know what everyone else thinks in the comment section, but please let me know. But I think Coburn, there's probably better out there, it's my assessment. But considering the age he's at, maybe if we can get him fit for a full season, I think he scored, 6 goals in 21 games, which isn't a bad return in the Championship. But can we keep him fit through the course of a 46-game season? He obviously struck a good partnership with Ivanovic, but I think let's see what happens. If we can maybe attract a better option, someone that's more rounded at the Championship and fits the profile a bit more, and someone that's not necessarily going to be injured for half the season, then will we see Coburn back? I'm probably going to say there's a 25% chance of that happening. That's my personal opinion, my personal take on it. Obviously, Sturridge also left. I think he obviously had a run of games toward the end of the season. I believe he's out of contract at Chelsea. So there is an argument there to be had. Maybe we can explore to get him in on a free transfer. But again, I feel like personally with Sturridge, that obviously he's the backup to Joe Bryan, who's had his contract extended. Obviously, an option's been triggered there. I think personally for me, there is better options out there to rival Joe Bryan. You could say Bryan's 31, maybe years of age. I'm kind of guessing there, but 31, 32 years of age. He's got a lot of abundance of experience, but he's also been one of the key mainstays in the side. But maybe you're starting to think of a succession plan. And can you get someone in that's maybe slightly older than Zach Sturridge, but also played 50 to 100 games in the Championship and can come in and really rival Joe Bryan for that position and perhaps supersede him by the end of the season. So be interested to see what happens. There's also an argument to say maybe Scanlon, maybe if he is fit for next season, that we can get him back in, because obviously he scored that good goal against Cardiff and had a real kind of run of games before his injury. I think he only played 5 games in total for us, but there's still enough bright sparks there for me to suggest that Scanlon might be a better option if there is a toss-up between the two of them, but we'll have to see and go from there. I think the club also confirmed, as mentioned, Joe Bryan extending his contracts. I think there was a clause in there to extend it for another season. Billy Mitchell, Wes Harding both also had clauses exercised in their contracts. Interesting take with Wes Harding. I think for me, he's obviously happy to be a kind of backup option, and with the departures of Murray Wallace and Shaun Hutchinson, I think it's key to have that sort of experience around squads and obviously players that are happy to feature and do a job when asked upon, I think. And with Wes Harding, he does fit that criteria, I think. And obviously you've got Kramer, Tanganga, Jake Cooper. Is Tanganga going to be here beyond the summer? A lot of rumours suggest probably not. But it'd be interesting to see what happens with Wes Harding, whether or not maybe he's moved on for a fee. Perhaps is there a play to be had there? I don't believe so personally, especially with, the fact that his contract was up and we've exercised this right. I can imagine it was a mutual thing, and maybe Harding likes to feature and be around at the club and, feels like he's got a part to play on Alex Neil. Great to see Billy Mitchell extend his contract. If I was Millwall, I'd be trying to extend that for a 3-year deal, 4-year deal if possible, and sit down and get it sorted this summer. And obviously Joe Bryan, like I mentioned, was a mainstay last season at left back, and I'd like to see him continue for another season at least and see what happens, I think. They've also confirmed we're in contract talks with George Saville, Danny McNamara, Liam Roberts, George Honeyman and George Evans. Would you keep all 5 of them, or is it a time for a proper refresh? Obviously Saville has been in and out of the side a lot this season, but still featured heavily. He's always been available for selection. I think that's an important thing to remember about George Saville. I think obviously he's a bit more experienced at this level. He's obviously playing a lot of games, and we've lost great experience, 500 appearances total combined for the club in Murray Wallace and Shaun Hutchinson. I think it's important to keep players like George Saville around. The same with George Honeyman. Both of them have shown at times they can do a job at this level, despite, you can say they're aging a bit. I think Saville's 32 years of age. Honeyman's probably 30. So I think the real problem with Honeyman for people is where does he fit into the plans and how the club wants to play and how the side wants to be set up by Alex Neil. For me, I'd keep Honeyman definitely around the squads. And if the pair of them both want to kind of commit to a year or 2 contract, maybe at reduced terms, because, they're not going to feature as much, I think it's a no-brainer to keep them both involved. That's just me speculating again. I don't know the ins and outs of contract negotiations. We can only assume. Danny McNamara and Liam Roberts. I think Danny McNamara, obviously, with his injury, he's been out the side for a little while. We don't know when he's coming back. There's been no return date set for him. I think it makes sense the club stick by one of our own. And obviously, he had this injury. The club's given him the opportunity and he's returned it and played, a couple hundred games for Millwall now. I think to me, you need to give Danny McNamara every opportunity to get himself back to full fitness. Maybe he's on a reduced contract, but enough to keep him by. And, he faces the prospect of being unemployed and not being able to play for sides and be able to get into the contract for another club. So I think it makes sense to look after Danny McNamara. Okay, you could say there's no sentiment in football, but player that's one of us. He's come through. He's got a Millwall family behind him. I think it makes sense, to be honest, to kind of see where Danny's at in half a year or a year's time whenever he's back to full fitness and give him the opportunity to earn an outright contract, really. I feel like Liam Roberts and George Evans, obviously the pair of them have both featured at different times in the season. I think Roberts, a lot of people spoke about where he's at with his mental state after the Mateta incident in the FA Cup. Yeah, we're still talking about that, as frustrating as that is. I think for me, Roberts, obviously with the injury of Jensen, it's important that we keep Roberts around. I think, if he has a pre-season under his belt, he's going into the season as number one with the unfortunate timing of Jensen's layoff. I think it makes sense to kind of keep both him and Evans around. And obviously Roberts is definitely capable. He's played, 300 games in his career at League One and Championship level. And I think it would do a lot worse than having the likes of Liam Roberts in 26 for next season. George Evans, obviously a young keeper, played a handful of games towards the end of the season, done himself no harm. I think maybe thinking for his development, he's still very young. Maybe sign another backup goalkeeper and maybe get Evans out on loan at League 2 level, perhaps. We'll have to wait and see. We'll obviously speculate that much more in the future, but I think it makes sense. I don't have any disagreement about all five of them potentially stay with the club. But again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And then obviously, lastly, we've got under 21s and youth clear out. So we've got 10 under 21 players being released, including the likes of Chinikoli, Shamar Lawson, and Dylan Adai. I think, from them players, they've obviously been around the club for a few years now, had senior contracts for 4 years now, and not really kicked on maybe how the club would have hoped and anticipated. Obviously, another departure in there, which is caused a bit of a ruffle online from what I've seen so far, is Nino Adamalakai. Obviously, he got injured out in Murcia last summer and didn't obviously get the chance to return and make his impact. I think he made one under 21 appearance before the end of the season off the bench. Obviously, the club stuck by him and gave him his rehab, but I guess at the end of the day, he's obviously not maybe what the club are looking for now, and it probably has set him back. I think in his case, slightly different to Danny McNamara, where he's not played as much in the first team, but also he's got back to his full fitness and maybe feels he can get a deal elsewhere, hopefully find himself a full-time home and be able to kick on and get some appearances under his belt at senior level, really. So, yeah, a show for him, I suppose, but the nature of the beast, isn't it, in football? And he's obviously back to full fitness. Hopefully we can see him popping up somewhere in League 2 or even the conference and really doing the business elsewhere. So all the best to obviously all them players that have left. A few players that have returned obviously from their loan spells. Kamal Grant is one of them from Bromley. He's obviously got another year on his deal by the looks of things. Frankie Baker, another one in the 21s, scored a lot of goals. And also the return of Kevin Nisbet, let's not forget, which will be interesting to see how that progresses next season, whether or not he gets the opportunity in pre-season on Alex Neil. But yeah, I mentioned obviously to these lot, it's the academy kids being released. It's never easy. I'm sure they've obviously got options elsewhere, hopefully, the likes of Frankie Hearn and stuff that you really thought would maybe kick on, or Henry Hearn, should I say, sorry. But yeah, it's not really happened for them. But I'm sure, the likes of George Alexander scoring goals in the Conference South Eastbourne Borough this season, there's enough kind of motivation for these players to prove the club wrong and hopefully go on to have good careers at senior football. So yeah, that's obviously a clear signal of transition again. New manager in, well, he's still new, 4 months in the job, Alex Neil. Steve Ganner's obviously got his first full summer under his belt to kind of implement new signings, expect more youth and hungry signings, I imagine, and players that are going to come in and try and, build on this whole mentality the club are trying to do going forwards. But it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to do a podcast tomorrow that you guys can then tune in to listen and get a bit more of an in-depth kind of thought and reaction to this. I just thought good to get some content out there tonight in reaction to the retainers being released. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to like the video and subscribe. Give me your thoughts and your reactions. So there it is. It's the full retain list reaction from me. Hutchinson and Muzz bow out as Mill great. A few question marks remain over the squad, and a big summer rebuild looks like it's brewing, as always. I want to hear from you. Who do we rebuild around now? Who would you let go? Maybe there's some players under contract. And who do you want to see in SC16 for next season? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. And don't forget, the full podcast drops later on, where we get a deeper dive and fan reactions. Thanks for watching, everyone. And as always, come on, you Lions.